And I just want to review that to provide some context for tonight's conversation. Amnesty International's goal is to see an end to the death penalty around the world. We believe the death penalty is an international violation of human rights, and at Amnesty USA we have a strong focus on tackling the U.S. death penalty because we think we are the best positioned in the United States to tackle that goal, and because we believe that when the United States abolishes the death penalty, it will do tremendous things to continue the trend forward globally to finally eliminate the death penalty around the world. But achieving that goal can feel sort of daunting, sort of like this large block that this poor person is trying to climb. And we've developed a three-pronged strategy at Amnesty for how we are tackling an end to the death penalty in the United States. And the first prong in that strategy is public education, because the more people understand the death penalty, the more likely they are to come around to our position that the death penalty ought to be ended. When people understand how the death penalty is applied in the United States, but also around the world, they start to see problems that perhaps they weren't aware of before that makes it more and more difficult for them to feel that they can support a system that is so badly riddled with unfairness, bias, and inaccuracy. And I think it starts to beg the question whether we ought to be ceding this type of power to our government at all. The second prong in our strategy is to do tailored state work. In the United States, the death penalty is by and large a state issue. It definitely does exist at the federal level, but for the most part, people who are sentenced to death are sitting on death rows in the states, and we have a strategy for taking on this issue at that level. There are states now that have built up very wonderful grassroots organizing campaigns and are getting closer and closer to abolition. Maryland and Connecticut are taking on the death penalty in their legislatures and are getting very, very close to passing a bill that would repeal the death penalty, and both states have governors who have said they would gladly sign such a bill. So we are working very hard with coalition partners to make that a reality in 2012. California is another exciting state where the voters will be asked in November on the ballot to consider an initiative to replace the death penalty with the next harshest punishment, which is life without parole and restitution. So there's some exciting things. There are other states that have some exciting legislative and other campaigns ongoing, and we'd be happy to connect you with the state death penalty abolition coordinators if you want to learn more what's happening in your state. But this is how we are planning to take down the death penalty in the United States. And then the third prong is what we're focused on tonight, and that is our emblematic cases. Since 1961, when Amnesty began over 50 years ago, we have tried to put a face on the issue of the death penalty, by lifting up the cases of individual prisoners whose situations and details of their case really speak volumes about the larger system that we think needs to be ended. Troy Davis, many of you may have worked on his case in the last several years. Some of you may have signed the petition and asked other people to sign it. We're gearing up now on the case of Reggie Clemons in Missouri. And the cases really have been an amazing way for people to understand this issue on a more personal level. So if you want to do the next slide. So when we were campaigning on behalf of Troy Davis, it was amazing to see this powerful movement of individuals who stood up, and that didn't happen overnight. Our campaign lasted 4 years. We had several high-level coalition partners involved in helping us, including the NAACP, folks in Black Talk Radio, different online advocacy groups, and other human rights and social justice organizations. And over time, we were able to build up a campaign where about 1 million signatures were gathered and delivered to Georgia's Board of Pardons and Paroles. And, you know, this is all starting from a place when nobody in 2007 really knew who Troy Davis was. It took a lot of work to sort of build up that visibility, but people really connected with his story, with his family's story, and I think began to understand the death penalty in a new, more personal way, and less as an abstract issue of crime and punishment, but more of an issue about human rights and human dignity. And I think there were a lot of people, we've gotten several accounts, who started to really change their mind once they understood the reality of this system. And I think being able to tell the stories of these individuals on death row is an amazingly powerful thing that can be done. And it's a real gift when their families are able to speak up and to help to tell those stories. I'm going to do the next slide. So I think most of you may be familiar with the two stories of Troy Davis and Reggie Clemons. If you're not, Troy Davis was accused of killing a white police officer in Savannah, Georgia in 1989 and was sent to death row primarily on witness testimony in 1991. And after he was convicted, 7 of the 9 key witnesses changed or recanted their testimony, really unraveling the case against him, and he was unable to get the relief he needed in the appeals process, given budget cuts to the defender system that helps people on Georgia's death row, and other obstacles to the law like the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, and a fixation in the criminal justice system on finality that really sort of trumped fairness and the strong orientation that just isn't there to make sure that the innocent are not put to death. So unfortunately, we did not succeed in stopping the execution of Troy Davis on last year, but I think that Troy recognized and said very clearly that the campaign on his behalf really was about something bigger than himself, and he asked us to stay committed to this fight and to help the other Troy Davises ahead of him so that they wouldn't face the kind of egregious injustice that he faced. And Reggie Clemons, pictured on the right, is a case a lot like Troy Davis's case. He was sent to death row in 1993 as an accomplice to the murders of 2 young white women in St. Louis that happened in 1991. These 2 young women fell from an old abandoned bridge where teenagers used to hang out. And one witness in particular who was there, a cousin of theirs, said that Reggie Clemons and 3 other youths were involved and responsible for their deaths. Interestingly enough, this cousin at one point confessed to having been involved in the deaths of his 2 cousins and then retracted that story. But Reggie Clemons' case has all the hallmarks of the worst practices that happen in the criminal justice system, from a police investigation with allegations of police brutality. Reggie Clemons, at his arraignment hearing, was told by the judge to go and get medical attention at the hospital because he showed up with a swollen face. You know, and this is from the allegations of police brutality. He had an inept legal defense that really did not raise the kind of objections that were needed. They didn't put in the kind of work and investigation that was needed in his case. An overly aggressive prosecutor who was told by the judge that his behavior was so bad he was risking putting the trial in jeopardy and having a mistrial, to blacks being improperly excluded from the jury pool, and other issues. So it really is such a badly handled case from the start, from the investigation through the trial, through the appeals, that we can't even be sure that the conviction is reliable. Reggie Clemons has maintained his innocence for the deaths of these two young women from the get-go, just like Troy Davis did as well. Can we go to the next slide? When we talk about the death penalty, we view it from the point of view of human rights as a human rights organization. We believe the death penalty violates the right to life. It's in Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It violates the right to be free from cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment or punishment. And it violates the right to be treated equal before the law in Article 7. Next slide. One thing that people don't often think about, and really is the focus of tonight's webinar, is how the death penalty harms everybody that comes into contact with it. The death penalty, comes out of a philosophy of retributive justice, or an eye for an eye, which goes back to the Hammurabi Code thousands of years ago. The idea is a wrong has been committed, and it can be corrected by paying one person's life with another. But really what it does is create a spiral downwards of violence. It harms those who are involved in the judicial process, the judges, lawyers, and jurors who are involved in sending somebody to their death. It harms those who have to run the prison, who get to know the prisoners on a daily basis and then are asked to carry out their execution. It harms those in the medical and pharmaceutical professions, whose professions are oriented around the idea of healing. And the Hippocratic Oath is one that doctors have to take that says we will do no harm. And yet doctors and nurses are involved in carrying out of executing individuals, of ending human life. And we know that murder victims' family members are of course harmed by the homicide of their loved ones, but they often find that the death penalty adds to the harm they experience, which is not something that people realize. But having to go through the years of appeals, the fact that so many death sentences are overturned due to serious error and are retried, has to put the family through many years of very difficult legal processes, and these families are promised that they will experience closure and relief in the process of having the person who perpetrated the crime against their loved one executed, but they're often not sort of told how difficult the process will be, and many murder victim family members have come to feel that life imprisonment would be a much stronger punishment for to provide that closure that they don't find that they have gotten with the death penalty. And then the silent or the invisible victims of the death penalty are the family members of those who are on death row. These are family members who are innocent, just as the murder victim family members are innocent. And the ordeal that they are dragged through is excruciating. And it's not something that many people in our society think about or may even have much empathy about. But it is a very damaging system that really drags everybody down. And at the end of the day, it drags all of us down, because executions are carried out on behalf of the citizens of the state that carries out the execution. And that really implicates all of us. And so this is an interesting sort of angle in on the death penalty to think about degrading treatment or punishment. Next slide. So the good news, of course, is that we can live without the death penalty, and we would be better for it. So now let's turn to Kim and Vera and start our conversation. I will throw out a couple of questions, and then Cynthia, if you will help us to field some of the questions that our participants write on the chat wall, that would be great.
Sure.
So I think I'd like to just ask what it was like for you all at the beginning when you learned that your loved one was a suspect in a murder case. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I know for me and my family, it was, like our entire community in Savannah had actually, turned their backs. No one wanted to hear that we believed that my brother was innocent. And, it was very hardening, because I know even when we first started getting petitions, when my sister Martina, who actually passed in December, when Martina and my mother would actually go and reach out to different ministers, reach out to different organizations, nobody really wanted to, even get involved. Even, up until just before my brother was executed, like earlier last year, even getting petitions signed then, we still had so many people that said that they believed in his innocence. They wanted to sign the petitions and do the right thing, but they were afraid that their jobs may be jeopardized. And, okay, you have someone's life on the line, and, do you think by signing your name on a petition will, jeopardize your job? My sister, she had gotten, many of hate emails from, people that lived in, like, the Columbia area, people that said that they were from the Ku Klux Klans and said, they're going to kill, if my brother does get out of jail, they're going to kill him, or, threatening my family. But, like I said, it was very, very hardening. But just to know that my brother's cause brought so many people together all around the world, that made a really big difference. And like my brother said, he said that he knew that people had started to listen to the case, but he didn't know the magnitude as to what it had gotten, because when they delivered, the million petitions to the parole board, he said that he knew, that people were listening, but he didn't know, that it was to this magnitude. And I mean, his case brought together people all over the world, black, white, Asian, I mean, just all over. And still today, we still have, so many different supporters wanting to know, what can they do to stand behind the cause. Some of them, they apologize. They say, well, we didn't step out, or we didn't come out up front, and, we want to apologize. We want to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else. And that's what my brother said. He said that he just wants to make sure that someone else doesn't get the same treatment that he got, just wanted to make sure that, everyone gets a fair trial, everyone gets a fair chance. And, I was talking with one of the inmates that's actually on Georgia's death row. I was talking with his mother. She called me like last week, and he was on the line. But he was saying, that even the warden there is still bragging about, Troy being executed. And with my brother's case, he was actually railroaded in his case by, from our police chief in Savannah, from the district attorney in Savannah to the judges in Savannah. So, it was very heartening at first, because we didn't have the support that we needed at first. But when everybody showed up, they did show up, and it made a difference. And we know we are still making a difference, still fighting for the death penalty, and, we are still making a difference.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. And there'll be a lot of chance for back and forth, too, so don't feel like you got to say everything you want to say in one answer. Vera, do you want to respond? What has the experience been like for you, especially when you first learned that Reggie was a suspect in a high-profile murder case?
Yes, I'd first like to give my sympathy and prayers for the family of Troy and anyone else that may be victims of the death penalty in any way. For us, it was a very horrifying experience. Reggie was 19 years old and had never been in trouble before. So we're thinking at the age of 19 that, okay, he's kind of past that crisis year and everything's kind of going to be okay, because we're making plans for the future to, to start up a business. So this was something that was not on our minds at all. And when now all of a sudden, from being in his room, sleeping normally and making plans for the future, he winds up, he winds up on death row. And it was just a nightmare. The police came to my house and knocked on the door. Did not tell me specifically what it was that they was going to take him down for. Mind you, they didn't arrest him. at that point. They said that they wanted to talk with him. And his name had come up, and they were talking to some persons, and everything panned out. He would be back home. Well, that was so far from the truth, because what they really had in mind was beating him into a confession once they got him down to the headquarters. So it was hours before I heard anything. Once they took him away from our home, he was perfectly normal. Nothing was wrong with him when he left my house. But hours later, I finally get a call stating that, not Reggie calling me. Reggie never got to call me. But one of the detectives called me stating that they had bad news and Reggie was going to be charged with murder, rape, robbery, just a whole slew of things they were naming off. And I was just horrified. And I wasn't able to get an attorney. This was on a Sunday evening until that Monday to get someone to go and see what was going on. Well, by Tuesday, his arraignment came up just that quickly. And I look back at the fact that this was on a Thursday night that this case came up. And here it is just by Tuesday. We're looking at an arraignment, an indictment, and all of these things when Tom Clemons, who was actually the cousin that was with the young ladies that had fallen off the bridge, was initially a suspect and was booked. And here within the same period of time, about 4 or 5 days, he gets released, saying his record was going to get expunged, and he becomes a state star witness. All this was just happening and unfolding so quickly. Then I started to see in news media, Reggie picture in the newspaper and on TV and just all over the place. This was like morning, noon, and night, and this went on for weeks and weeks. This case being put in the newspaper in a very negative way and calling Reggie. Actually, Reggie was 19. Marlon Gray, the oldest black youth, was 23. Antonio Richardson was a 16-year-old black youth. And Daniel Winfrey was a 15-year-old white youth that was with the group. But the three black males, Marlon, Antonio, and Reggie, was the ones that wound up getting the death sentence. And just seeing this, it just was mind-boggling to think, could this really be happening? Like when I see Reggie picture on TV, it was just like shock that could this really be happening? You know, after all the things that were planned, his future, you know, and it was just horrifying. So as things proceeded on, we were trying to find an attorney. Really wasn't familiar with a good attorney and wind up with an incompetent attorney, which created a lot of other legal issues when we got to the appeal process. We also had a prosecutor who was notorious for hiding evidence and tampering with witnesses and all the things that would cause a person not to have a fair trial. We had jury issues in Reggie's case. We also had the prosecutor threatening witnesses. And at one point, the judge had instructed the prosecutor not to use Manson, John Gacy, or Charles Manson, because Reggie had never been locked up before. And the prosecutor went against the judge's orders when we got to the death penalty phase. And he did just that, told the jury that don't be fooled because he'd never been in trouble before, because Charles Manson or Gacy, he created some kind of similarity, had not at one time been locked up. And we asked for a mistrial. Immediately, we were denied a mistrial by that judge. However, that same judge, when we filed for contempt of court against the prosecutor, that same judge found the prosecutor in contempt of court for disobeying those instructions and finding $500. So that's just one of many things that happened during Reggie's trial, that he had not had a fair trial from the beginning all the way to where we are now. we had also filed against lethal injection, because at one point there were about 10 people. Names were lined up to be executed, and Reggie was one of those persons. That was about 2 years ago. So that was real horrifying to see his name on a list of people to be executed. And here we had not had our day in court because we had all these issues going on. So it was around about this time when we had filed for the against the lethal injection that state decided to set execution date. The attorneys didn't know about it. Reggie, of course, didn't know about it. None of us knew that this was going to happen. However, it did. And June 17th, 2009, Reggie was given an execution date. So this was even more shocking. And at this point, we're just really trying to understand that what's going on, horrified. And when you're at the prison down there where the execution chamber is, you can actually see a door, and you know behind that door is where they execute people. So while you were visiting, while I was visiting him in this small room, really shackled from the waist, the feet, arms, could barely hold a telephone, you're seeing this door where you know they plan on executing him. Well, thank God for prayer and for the community and people support that contacted the Attorney General's office, contacted the governor about the issues and the problems with this case. Because most people over the years have always said something's wrong with this case. And the fact that they're considering killing people, when Reggie was given the death penalty as an accomplice. And the people in this Chain of Rock case, each time the prosecutor argued, it was 3 black males that received the death penalty. But each one of those defendants, he changed the story. So here the story was constantly changing. No accountability as to what happened to the young ladies. If anyone never could say Reggie killed them, with all of this, he still got death penalty as an accomplice. So here we are, he's about to get executed. It'll be like 12 days from an execution. And when the state decides to give him a stay. And at that point, they also appointed a special master who has been reviewing his case. And this is the very first time we've had review of Reggie's case.
And Vera, let me just jump in here because we will definitely give people an update on where Reggie's case is before the end of the webinar. You know, for both of you, and maybe we'll jump back to Kim now. The whole process of dealing with the death penalty as a family member of the person accused must be incredibly overwhelming.
Yes.
And I know that you know, for both of your families, not really understanding the legal system because you know you're not lawyers. You know, I understand that both of your families hired private attorneys because you figured that your loved ones would fare better, and I'm not sure that really played out in either of your cases.
No, it didn't.
It certainly didn't in your case, Vera, with Reggie. But Kim, could you speak a little bit to the experience of this really bewildering and hostile legal environment and how your family was treated? Because unlike with Vera and Pastor Thomas, you all weren't even allowed to be in the courtroom when the proceedings took place.
No, we were not allowed to be in the courtroom. We actually sat outside on a hard concrete bench. You know, me and my family sat out there. But with the lawyers that we had in my brother's case, Robert Falligant was actually one of the ones, Robert Barker, Nancy Askew. And when my brother was actually, when he was actually sentenced, you know, gotten his death sentence, my mother thought that with all the money that she'd actually paid those lawyers, that they were actually going to follow through with the appeals, because it was things that, you know, even before, during the trial, different things that Troy was asking, you know, the lawyers to do, asking them to, cross-examine, this witness, or, just say this and say that. And, they told Troy, it was best that, he didn't say anything. It was best that they didn't ask any questions because, they had the witnesses that stated that Troy was there. And even, during his initial trial, it was things that, just didn't seem right. But the lawyers, we weren't in the courtroom with Troy, so it was like, his family was outside, so it was like, it was just him in the courtroom with the other family and with the lawyers, and the lawyers not doing what he wanted them to do. But when he was actually sentenced to death, two of the lawyers that was in his case actually became Superior Court judges in Savannah. And it was, very, very heartening, because my mother thought that with the money that she had actually given them, because she had to take out a second mortgage on our home that was already paid for. And with the money that she had actually given them, she thought that they was going to actually represent him after he had gotten his death sentence, thought that they were going to be able to follow through with the paperwork, but everything just dropped through a loophole. They told her, that was it. They were not going to represent him anymore. And it was still questions that my mom had. And even though, they were our private attorneys, each and every time my mother went to talk with the lawyers at their office, she had to take their money each and every time just to ask them questions, just to try to get them to file paperwork for Troy that Troy needed filed. Troy would call us. He would call my mom and say, well, I want my lawyers to file this for me. And, he said that he's tried to get in touch with the lawyers. They won't return his phone call. He can't get them to come visit him. But then when my mom went to their office, in order for her to talk to them, she had to pay them each and every time to talk to them just to get them to file different paperwork. And they were saying, well, they don't think that we need to file such and such now. So, our lawyers that we had initially in our trial, in my brother's trial, they actually failed us from the beginning. And even,
Yeah, I just to jump in here, I mean, the whole legal process, no matter, what side of it that you might be involved, must be very bewildering. And I have heard your sister, when she would speak about the situation, just how hostile the community was towards you all. And I wonder, Vera, if you could speak to the kind of treatment that you received from the community in St. Louis, and I would suspect that different parts of the community may have treated you differently, or perhaps people you knew a long time started to treat you differently once they knew that your son was being tried and ultimately convicted for this this terrible tragedy. What kind of response, or how were you treated by people in your community?
Well, I would say, as far as the community concerned, more than anything, questions always remained about this case, regardless of whether it was black or white. There were a few times, that people would put things out on the internet, negative things like this person should be killed, this, that, and other. But overall, this case have always had questions from day one. I would say one of the most hostile environments regarding this case was right inside the prison when Reggie was possibly going to be executed. And when he didn't get executed and came back to the prison site where he stayed, or where his cells was, from the guards, saying very ugly things about, they wish that he had not come back, and they even took all his clothing, and for 6 months he didn't have any decent clothes to put on. He had holes in his socks. So they really retaliated right within the prison during that 6 months after he was taken off of death row. Not death row, after he was given a stay, I'm sorry.
And I know that just the battles with treatment in the prisons has been a real challenge, also in Georgia and Troy's situation, but as Kim, you mentioned earlier, with others, and it's a very controlled environment, and with different administrations that run the prisons, you see a lot of sort of changes with the rules that make it very difficult for the families and loved ones to really play a positive role. I want to look now at some questions that some of the participants are asking have to do with the murder victim family members, and I wanted for you all to comment about that. Oftentimes, you know, our judicial system sets up an adversarial dynamic where it's your family against the other family, and I just wanted you all to comment on that dynamic, and obviously the family of the murder victims go through an awful ordeal. They've lost a loved one, and what was your experience sort of always being contrasted with those families, and what is your sense about what you actually have in common with those families?
I think what we have in common is the hurt, the loss of your loved one's presence, or the physical loss of them, and the grief that follows it. Those are things that I would say that we have in common. The other would be the hostility in the courtroom that took place with the guards, with the sheriffs giving turnkey signals to the family to let them know that a verdict had come down. It would be with the family sitting on one side, the victim's family, and our family sitting on the other side and being told that you can't sit over there at all, I mean nowhere in that area. And the fact that after each evening when we would leave the courtroom, the victim's family were personally escorted to their cars, and we didn't feel that we should have been a threat of any kind. I would say it was a very hostile environment. The the sheriffs were set outside the door. Like at one point they had paper covering the door and sitting outside so people weren't able to freely come in unless it was a break. Well, how would you know it was a break if you wasn't able to see what was going on? So I would say the environment was very hostile during Reggie's trial.
And Kim, can you comment on the way that that your family is always sort of being compared as being against the McPhail family, and I know that that was a really important thing for your family to not return that kind of dynamic to make the situation as if it was your family against the other family. But what was your experience with that kind of contrast and always sort of being having that in the background?
Well, yeah, that was the same with our family. Like I said, as far as like at the trial, our family actually had to sit outside the courtroom. But the McPhail family, the victim witness, they had their family. They presented their family. When there were breaks, when there were lunch, their families were actually escorted to another room in the courthouse where they had lunch that was catered for them. They had food that was brought in for them. Even, when we went back for the evidentiary hearing, our family was not allowed to even park anywhere near the courthouse. They told us that we had to park in a parking garage, which was like 3 blocks away from the courthouse. But the McPhail family, they actually brought the McPhail family to the courthouse, all of them on a trolley. They brought them exactly, to the courthouse steps. We actually, with our family members and different supporters that we had, we were actually in the park that was actually in front of the courthouse. And you had different restaurants that were around the courthouse. When some of the people had to use the restroom, they would go in. If they had on their Troy Davis T-shirts, they would go into the restaurants or to different eatery places and ask if they can use the restroom. They tell them, no, they don't have a restroom that they can use. They ask them, well, if we buy something, can we use the restroom? And that was the same thing. No, we don't have a restroom you can use. Even when we were out in the park, I remember at the evidentiary hearing when we were in front of the courthouse, it was someone that a Caucasian man drove by with the red Confederate flag hanging out his truck, and then he had a noose, and he said, "I want to kill Troy Davis." And you had the court officers, you had police and stuff that were outside the courthouse, saw this man passing by, heard this man threaten us, we don't leave, what he's going to do to us. But did the police do anything about that? No. Even with the news media, my mother often said, my sister often said, we're not only praying for the Davis family, we're also praying for the McPhail family. But anytime during the news media when they interview my sister or my mother or anyone that said that we were praying for the McPhail family, they would never print that in the newspaper. You would never even see that, hear that on the news. They cut off that part because they wanted to, the media wanted to make it seem like it was the Davis family against the McPhail family, wanted to make it seem like, we hated them. In return, we didn't hate them because, for someone to have so much hate in their hearts for that many years, it's kind of hard to believe. And my mother often said, we pray for Officer McPhail's son because even his son, after the 22 years, he still had so much hate. His mother, McPhail's mother, had so much hate. And his mother, she said, she would only find closure when Troy Davis is killed. She said she didn't want to hear anything else. She was tired of them saying that he's innocent. She was tired of us, paying off different people. The only thing that would bring her closure is to see Troy executed. And even the night that Troy was executed, when the news media went back and interviewed her, and they asked her, did she find the closure that she was looking for all of these years, she even said she still didn't find closure. Even though he was already executed, that's what she wanted, she still didn't find closure. So, we still have to keep them lifted up in prayer because for someone to have that much hate in their hearts, it's very sad.
And I would just follow up on what you're saying, and that for those of us who are opposed to the death penalty, it's important that we do not fall in the trap of viewing family members who want the death penalty and family members who don't, and family members of those on death row, that it's important that we see that all of these individuals have suffered in one way or another from either the tragedy of what the criminal justice system is set up that is ultimately more destructive than constructive, and that these families go through a tremendous amount of pain, and really what we want to fight for is the end of a system that is destructive, and for a system that actually does more to tend to the needs that create those bitternesses and that tend to the real needs that happen in the wake of violent crime, rather than simply perpetuate more harm and more injustice. I want to ask you all now how it is that you found support. What support have you found that is there for murder victim family members, and what has it meant to you once you have found this connection with people who are in the advocacy community, like folks in Amnesty International?
Well, I know for my family, it was a great relief. It was a great source of just reaching out, and like we said before, our family has brought together people all over the world. So it's not our family working with Amnesty International. It's not our family working with NAACP. It's not our family working with GFADP. It's all of us have come together in our family because, it's not like they're just treating us like a number. They're treating us like they really care. They stepped in and, just took the role, and they said, we're here for you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And we're going to be here and stick with you to the end because, like I said, we didn't have that at first. But it doesn't matter what we had at first. It's actually what the outcome is. And with our outcome, I mean, like I said, it was a great source outcome of showing love and support, showing everyone fighting for the same cause. And it took the people that was outside the city of Savannah. It took the people in Atlanta. It took the people in Washington, D.C. It took the people in London, just all over the world to open the eyes of the people of Savannah, to show Savannah that, okay, these other people are stepping out for someone that's in our community. Maybe we do need to step in and make a difference. Maybe we do need to join in on the bandwagon. And, you know, like I said, for so many years, a lot of the mouths in Savannah, you know, they were hushed. But, you know, just over, especially over these last couple of months, you know, there's still just things just still going on. You know, we're still fighting for the death penalty. And like I said, you know, people are still calling, texting, emailing, wanting to know what can they do to help us with this fight against the death penalty. And like we said, knowledge is powerful. We need to get out into the communities, get out to these different organizations and let them know about the injustice that there is in the death penalty.
Great. Thank you, Kim. And how about you, Vera? How did you all find that support, and what has it meant to you, and what has it meant to Reggie? And is Reggie seeing a growing number of people getting involved on his behalf?
It has been a tremendous support and enlightenment for him, particularly there in Potosi. He's received numerous letters from individuals, and it has really uplifted him because it let him know that even though many times he may be harassed and their conditions may be very restrictive. I mean, it's times he was even in a hole for a year. But in spite of all these things, now that he knows that there are people outside, that there are people that care, and that they can't shut him down simply by locking him down, but because there are voices out here. I appreciate all the activists, Amnesty, all organizations, all the individuals that care about us as a human race. That's what we are, regardless of what else. We all belong to the human race. And I appreciate so much. It has been such a relief to know that there's others out there joining in with the voice for justice. It's been like a 20-year fight. This case started in 1991. And I remember I started out with posters and whatever, trying to understand what was really going on with this system, but knowing that the fact of getting information out to the people was very important to really understand what was going on with the death penalty. And you really can't do it by yourself. You like to say, no man is an island. It's taken all of you. I appreciate it so much to be that voice, to be heard. So we heard all over the world, to be heard all over this country, and to be heard in Jefferson City. We're trying to get bills passed to repeal the death penalty, and it's going to take everyone. I appreciate your support and you advocating for the cause of injustice against the death penalty and for Reginald. It's been a great inspiration to him to know that you all are there.
And Vera and Kim, I know I can speak on behalf of everybody at Amnesty and the other organizations and concerned individuals that you all inspire us tremendously. It's not an easy thing for people who have gone through so much suffering to speak out. My sense is that you all do that because you feel compelled to, you feel called to, and then it gives you strength to be able to give back to this movement that has really been standing with you all. Can you speak, both of you, maybe starting with Kim, what you think the impact of the work on behalf of your brother, Troy Davis, has meant to the larger issue? Have you seen people change their mind on the death penalty? Have you seen energy in the state of Georgia to push for abolition? What do you both think about the impact all this energy that's being directed to help your families is making on the larger struggle?
Well, I do think that that it has made a big impact, because even like one of our state representatives, state legislators, after Troy was actually executed, we actually reached out to him several times, you know, just trying to get him just to stand with us, to put in a bill to stop the death penalty. And, you know, right now, State Representative Craig Gordon, he's actually, you know, trying to put in a bill, you know, to end the death penalty in Georgia. And, you know, like you said, you know, it just takes one person to try to stand up and make a difference and to get someone else on the bandwagon. And we had so many people out there, even the night that my brother was executed. We had people that was out there, that stated that, they were for the death penalty, but they don't think that the death penalty is right because they saw the injustice. And I mean, these were just everyday people, just people just reading up on the cases themselves. And, they came out and, we had several people to tell us that, they believed in the death penalty, but they see that the death penalty is wrong. They see how my brother was railroaded. They want to know, what can we do to try to help y'all fight the death penalty. So it has made a difference because there's still other senators in Atlanta also that, hold different rallies and, trying to get bills passed, trying to see what they can do, to end the death penalty.
Right. And how about you, Vera? What impact are you seeing on the larger issue as people get involved to help your son?
Well, I'm seeing people overall realize that as a result of what happened with Troy, how justice was ignored, that these same things are happening with Reggie and others, and will continue to happen unless we as people make an effort to stop it. I believe people have become more aware of the injustice and the flaws in the system that it cannot be fixed. Because we're dealing with human beings, judges that are making decisions, making life and death decisions. And we all know that unless you have like $100,000 more to even start working with an attorney, I mean, chances of you getting a fair trial, starting even just there, is not going to happen. So you add all these other elements onto that, chance of you getting a fair trial in this country is very slim. And that should not be what justice is about. That should not be what democracy is about. That should not be what we stand for as a country that supposedly believes in a justice system. Well, we have a flawed system. Now, I hope the world realizes it, everyone come to realize it, how flawed it is, and that it cannot be fixed.
Okay. Thank you. I want to make sure that we give our participants an update on what's happening with Reggie's case and a sense of how they can be involved in this movement. I've tried to integrate some of the themes from y'all's questions into tonight's conversation. I'm sorry if I didn't get to them all precisely. One question for you, Vera, somebody wanted to know what could be sent to Reggie besides letters. Are letters the only thing that can be sent to him?
Well, I would say at this time, he had a hearing scheduled for March the 5th of this year, and that date has been changed to September the 17th of this year. I would say letters are very encouraging. There will be a point during this 6-month period that we will be asking people perhaps to write the governor or to write the Attorney General.
Let's hold on that. I think the participant may be wondering about things like stamps or things like beyond just letters. What are things death row inmates in Missouri are allowed to receive in the mail?
Well, unfortunately, you can't do stamps. What you can do is like money orders, and he can purchase stamps himself. Or he can purchase phone cards because they charge quite a bit for using the phone for the minutes. Even the prompting of the operator and the voice takes up at least several minutes of your time right there.
Right.
So things of that nature would be a great resource and help.
So can I encourage folks, if you have some specific questions like that, to feel free to send me an email. And Cynthia, could you type my email up on the wall there? And also go to our final slide about getting involved. So back to our three-pronged strategy. Education may sound like a generic prong, but it is so important that people really understand what the system is about. And hopefully some of you are involved in some educational activities during this Death Penalty Action Weeks period. There are a lot of ways to do that. You can do that by organizing events on your campus or your community, but also in the things that perhaps you share with people in your community, even electronically. If you submit blog pieces, that sort of thing. The other piece is find out what's going on in your state. In the Death Penalty Action Weeks kit, you all should have been sent that kit. you can find a directory, a list of the state death penalty abolition coordinators to find out what specific things are needed in your state to advance abolition. If you're in a state that doesn't have the death penalty, we encourage you especially to be involved in these emblematic cases. And in the case of Reggie, as Vera mentioned, he was supposed to have a hearing to look at the reliability of his conviction and the proportionality of his sentence. And that has been postponed to September 17th, as Vera just mentioned. And so we want, in this period of time, while we've got more time to generate sort of visibility and support for people to continue to educate people about Reggie's case, there's a PowerPoint that Cynthia's just put up on our chat wall, a link to it, or two PowerPoints, but one has to do with Reggie and Troy Davis's case as a way to tell people about the death penalty, to explain it to them. The other thing is we really need people to help us collect signatures on our petition. The website on Amnesty's page, or the page within our website, is showmejustice.org. On showmejustice.org, you'll find the fact sheet, the report, and the petition form. You can also circulate the link to the online petition, which is also on showmejustice.org. But we need to get as many people as possible to endorse this petition so that we can really show and demonstrate to the authorities in Missouri how many people are tuned in and understand this case and its many problems. So we hope that you will help us to take this campaign for Reggie Clemons to the next level. We think that we ought to be able to create the kind of momentum and energy that was created for Troy Davis's case. You know, a week after Troy Davis was executed, Gallup conducted its regular poll on public opinion in the death penalty, and support for the death penalty had dropped by about 3 percentage points. That's very, very significant. We're at an all-time low in terms of U.S. Support for the death penalty. We want it to go even lower, but we are actually succeeding in this fight. We've got more states that have abolished the death penalty, several that are lining up to pass abolition legislation. We see that death sentences and executions on a downturn. The world is turning away from the death penalty. Every year, additional countries join the list of countries that don't have the death penalty. Over 2/3 of the world no longer use this punishment. We know the United States will be on that list, and we know that your energy, your involvement, your passion, your getting out the word and engaging in these tactics to help us with this strategy are going to be part of that recipe for success. And we very much are grateful to you. I know that Kim and Vera are very grateful on behalf of their families for the work that you're doing. And I'll just see if Cynthia wants to say anything before I give Vera and Kim the final words.
No, thank you, Laura. I'm just going to try to answer a few people's questions, and if you have, any other questions or want me to repeat anything, just feel free to send me a chat. Again, thank you to Kim, Laura, and Vera.
Thank you.
Yep, and if you've got specific questions about the about Maryland and things going on in your state, please look in the Death Penalty Action Week's kit, and you'll find your state death penalty abolition coordinator. If you don't have one, you can contact your field organizer or us in the Death Penalty Abolition Campaign, and we'll be happy to get to things that we didn't quite get to on this webinar. But again, we really thank you for tuning in tonight and being part of this struggle.